Welcome back to another episode of Rethink Real Estate. Today, we're talking about diminishing returns in the marketing sense and how there's parts of different industries in their marketing where it's so blatantly obvious that there are diminishing returns and that they're not getting the absolute most out of it. Is it throwing more money at a problem or throwing more spend or getting seen more can sometimes be a negative effect. It's quite a snappy little saying, diminishing returns, hence the reason that we did this. I give a bit of a brief explanation in the beginning of the podcast with Chris, but it's a really good thing to actually think about when it comes to the way that you're marketing yourself and have your relationships hit a peak where you've got to be careful that much more may actually cause them not to use you and start to erode that relationship. Thanks so much. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. So, Chris, as I press play or start on this, I've realized that the only real reason that I wanted to do this episode with you, one, because I think it's going to be good, but two, is I think it's a snappy title. You said it. You said it in one of our meetings that we had. I'm like, oh, that's such a good line that makes me think that I know what I'm talking about if I said diminishing returns.
You know, it's one of those catchphrases that makes you sound smarter than you probably are. When in reality, it just means stop doing everything when you can focus on a little and have some success.
Again, so today, not only is it a podcast to educate the listeners, it's also to educate me a little bit further on diminishing return. Because when I asked it, I'm like, what were you talking about diminishing return? It was more in relation to the spend on social media that we were talking to one of the agents and all that stuff that was happening. But I then brought it up with you afterwards, and it literally made me think about diminishing return in parallels to anything really.
Yeah, I mean, it can go I think it's a common term in any business that's out there. I mean, there's diminishing returns in personnel. You know, you can have too many salespeople and then you don't have enough food for everybody, if that makes sense. If you don't have enough leads or anything like that for everybody. But it can also work in marketing, especially and ads and everything like that, which I think is where we were focused on for it specifically. But yeah, it's all across business and it's anything you're trying to do. I mean, it's even workouts. If you want to think about life, there's at some point you're at a point of exhaustion and you can't have any more gains. And so
that's that's a strong point because believe it or not, I'm literally just signed up a couple of hours before doing this episode with you to a marathon coach to do a marathon, right? And first thing he says to me is you've got a lot of junk miles. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, first of all, fuck you, dude. Really? I'm grinding here. But now they've got to look at my volume of miles that I do on a weekly basis. He's like, Ben, you should probably cut back your running by at least, 15 miles a week or 10 miles a week because they just don't do anything for you at that point. You've reached a level and you've reached a capacity now that it actually doesn't help you. It just mentally you think that you have to do that now and get more and more and more or faster and faster and faster. And that's another thing. Another part that really got me is he's like, stop running so fast. I'm like, huh? He's like, well, I want to do a certain time for the marathon. He's like, no. You that is all it's doing is actually not making you faster. It's just opening up your risk for injury. So that's what. So is that the same sort of terminology? You get to a point where you reach a pinnacle that anything more basically means less. Is that what diminishing return is from a marketing point, from a database perspective in your business, when you train, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean it's different obviously from an athletic perspective, but it's come into athleticism probably in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, you talk about especially I'm a big UFC fan or boxing fan as well, and there's a lot of guys who have just quit sparring completely because they know how to fight. And they so they know how to fight, they know how to punch, they know how to throw kicks and everything like that, but they don't actually want the trainers don't want the athletes to go through that risk of injury. So similar to what you're going through in athleticism from running perspective, they don't want you to exhaust yourself. So when fight day comes or when your marathon comes, you are ready and primed, and you're in the best shape of your life on game day. Like
Right.
that's usually what it is. When it comes to a marketing perspective, diminishing returns on the other side is specifically where we were talking about it from an ads perspective is there's a point from a dollar perspective where you're just not doing more. You're just staying in front of people too much with the same content. And so there's a term in marketing that's called ad fatigue. And ad fatigue is when one ad stays up longer at that point. So one creative, one ad that you see stays up longer than intended to a specific audience. So they've seen it too many times and they start to just pass by it on the freeway. So the freeway would be the social media engines at this point, and they're just passing by that billboard and they stop noticing it at that point. So same thing happens on, streets and everything like that, bus benches. You start noticing the same thing over and over and over. It has a subliminal effect in that standpoint, but it's not actually leading to more business at that from that standpoint. So
there's so many things that are running through my mind right now. Like diminishing return is when you send too many emails to your database, you start to get unsubscribes.
Yep.
You just gave a bus bench a terminology. Like I know for a fact that I've driven by, like on the way to work, the same bus bench. I've never taken notice at all. Yeah. Like never taken notice of them. Like maybe the first time that there was a different color there or something like that, but I couldn't tell you what's on there now.
And that's
because
the big
it's been
thing.
up the same time for so long.
Good creative can combat ad fatigue. So good creative and good content can combat ad fatigue, and people will notice it the first 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But then once you start to see it over and over and over, and one prime example of this is ad fatigue can be different to every different type of audience that you're in there. So if I purchase something, like I just purchased a new monitor, directly after that, I got an ad for that same monitor. That makes no sense to me, right? Like that makes absolutely no sense, and it happens all the time.
Can I give you one? Give you one that drives me wild? Okay, I purchased an 8 Sleep, like with the mattress cover. Like it's enhanced the volume of ads I get from 8 Sleep and emails I get, and I'm so mad that I'm like, guys, I just spent the money. Yeah. Just leave me. Like I just spent the money. Like why aren't you recognized that? Or haven't you recognized that?
Yeah, like I did. I get the same thing for Nectar, and I get text messages and emails from them. And in my opinion, it's a wasted investment for them and a wasted investment in their time. And again, it's diminishing returns because I'm probably not your target audience for X amount of months, X amount of years, whatever it is, because now I have, 2 mattresses. I have actually 3. So I have 3 mattresses in my house that are all from you, and I don't need any more. And so there are ways from an advertising perspective to eliminate those people, which is called exclusion lists. And so you can actually upload all your customers or all the people you're currently in business with or all the people that you're currently talking to an exclusion list, and then they will no longer see those ads. So like 8 Sleep and Nectar, in my case, they should have a customer list of people who just made a recent purchase, add them to an exclusion list so that when Facebook ads are spending money, they're not wasting money on me and you who probably won't buy again in the short term.
Chris, is the leakage in that? Like leakage is
100%.
Like the leakage in that, like, is that because they're just too big, the companies, and they don't understand it? Like, why is that? Because like
they might have some metrics internally in their thought process that when people buy one mattress, they buy a second one in a short period of time. Like they might have stuff like that.
But my purchase is a one and done, man. Like it's same. One done. Like it's we're out of here. Like again, it just because I want to tie this back in.
They'd be able to tell your demographics too from that standpoint of seeing that you're don't have kids. They can find that information out on Facebook. There's a lot of things that they can pull in from your demographic standpoint that could exclude that. So it would 100% be one and done because you're not buying an 8 Sleep for your guest bed.
No,
You're
absolutely
just
not.
not doing it. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, I don't care how much money you've got. There's absolutely no chance.
yeah. I hope no one out there is spending, multiple 8 sleeps so that their guests have a great sleep when they're there. Like, that'd be, I'll stay at your place.
Yeah,
If that's the
I was gonna
case.
say, I can't wait the next time you come down and spend time in our house. You're like, hey, bud, where's that second 8 slip for me?
Yeah, exactly. So, but from a real estate perspective, this could be people you already have interactions with. This could be your client list. This could be people that don't meet the demographic for that specific ad. So if you're doing ads around, first time home buyers or single family homes, you can exclude all the people who might not be interested in that same thing, and so that they're not getting bombarded by all of your ads, and it's also saving you money in the long run. um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
that's where kind of those target lists come into play, because then you can have, here's all my buyers, here's all my sellers. Okay, my sellers don't need to see this ad, and my buyers don't need to see this other ad. So let's exclude them from each other and not have some overlap in that standpoint.
two thoughts that sort of come to my head just then is that, diminishing return comes from lack of attention that you're giving a list that you generate originally. It really is. Like, if you think about, you pull all of your clients into an individual database and you start talking to them, and that the terminology's leaving me at the moment. If you put everybody into a list, what do we call it for Facebook? An audience, right?
Audience.
Yep. So you create an audience. It's all your clients. It's everything along those lines. And then you just set it and you roll ads into it every month, and you do a whole bunch of stuff. Like, that's probably diminishing return, because the thing that I would probably get a little frustrated with if I'm a client of yours, if you call me and go, hey, Ben, just checking in on a quarterly basis, just saying hello, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden I'm getting peppered by you on social as well, like of just generic stuff, not one-off stuff. Like, I want to see the houses you list. I want to go and look at the walkthrough, all that stuff. But if you're like, sell your home with Ben Brady or whatever those individual weird generic ads are, if I'm getting targeted those, I don't feel as personal touch. I think that could be a diminishing return, yeah?
Yeah, I think there's good parts of there. Like we've talked about in the past, of having awareness and having kind of a constant awareness ad and stuff like that that's going out there, so that people see that and they kind of feel like that you're bigger than you are, if that makes sense. Like that, those are always good. But again, when you're just running the same ad month on month on month without any updates to creative, that's where the diminishing return, or you're spending just an exorbitant amount of money. So say your target audience really gets reached, maybe it's like 4 times a month for $500, and you're like, I just want more, so you just put more money behind the ad, and you're like, I want $1,000 per month now instead of $500 per month. Well, you're just going to get more views on that, and you're not updating the creative. You're going to double those views. So now those people, instead of seeing it 4 times, they're going to see it 8 times. Like theoretically, in this situation, they'll see it 8 times. Well, the point of ad fatigue usually happens statistically around like 4 to 6 times seeing the ad on social media. So if you're pushing over into that 8 mark, that's when people start to get annoyed. And then if you get into 10, 15, 20 times they've seen that ad, that's when people are severely annoyed, because they're going on their social media to see new things. And that's when Facebook makes those ads more expensive at that point, because they realize that people are skipping over them faster. And so to actually show them, they want to actually make more money, because people are like leaving the platform whenever they see your ad or stuff like that. Because Facebook constantly wants, that's why the algorithm is there. Facebook wants to constantly show you new, refreshing, and engaging posts and stories and everything like that, because they want to keep you on their platform. Well, when your ad has been shown to them so many times that people start exiting the platform, it gets more expensive for you at that point.
Do you know, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Peter Attia, and he was on there with a gentleman who was it was talking about, I can't remember what it was exactly about, but anyway, they referred back to the ad side of things, and he's like, I've stopped going to Google. And he's like, and it was a comment that Peter Attia made. He's like, I've stopped going to Google. I'm like, the guy on the other side who was the guest on his podcast turned around and said, oh, that's right. It was Michael Easton from the book, The Comfort Crisis. Anyway, they were talking about searching things. And he's like, they were talking about how social media has been designed with the same people that design slot machines. Right? Yes. Is that there's a fake casino in Las Vegas where it's set up like it's just in a warehouse building, but when you walk in, it's like a real casino, because they monitor all the human reactions and everything like that people go in when they're gambling. And guess who the primary investors are? It is the social media companies that are the primary investor in this casino to see how that works, so then they can tie it into the ads and everything like that. And it's funny, they were talking about this, and Peter Attia says, well, I don't go to Google anymore. It's like, well, why don't you go to Google anymore? Because I feel like Google doesn't know me. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, Google doesn't know me because when I go in and I search 1, 2, 3, like I search, running shorts, for example, I get all of these choices and I have to make a choice and I have to, which one's better and which one's worse. And then usually they come up with these funky brands and it's just not what I want. Whereas if I go to Instagram, I type in running shorts, all of a sudden I get to see them. I get to see validation of these people, and it really targets me because the algorithm knows me so well from what I spend time on, and they just know
Who
me a
you
lot
interact
better.
with, and
Yeah.
what pages you follow, and everything like that. Like,
Yeah.
I also think from a Google standpoint, I wonder what they've taken a hit from their Google Shopping, and you have their Google Marketplace and everything like that, because a lot of the decisions are made before we even get to Google at this point. Like, if you think about from an influencer marketing, or I forgot the other terms, but like a user generated content and everything like that that's happening out there, UGCs, where people, influencers and social media personalities and people you follow, everyday people, are posting all these products. We fall in love with the product way before we even need to look at Google for running shorts or running shoes or anything like that. Like, we're getting personalized reviews inside of our social media already, which is pretty crazy world that we're living in. It hasn't. I don't think it's really stretched into real estate yet.
No, but it
Like,
kind of thinking about the parallels, Chris, like, do
yep.
you just need to, I think that there's a part of this where having a manageable audience, and we say audience, I mean database within real estate, is that going through and making sure like there's like maybe some quality control with those people. Like, for example, Chris and Danielle, and then, am I friends with them on Facebook, friends with them on Instagram? Do I have them on LinkedIn? And then like, when was the last time you spoke? What did you speak about? Like, all of this makes sense in order to then probably look at where you target or where you don't target them, or how often you're in front of them and what you're actually sending them, and making a little less generic. Don't get me wrong, we want a little bit of plug and play in this so that it's not 100% hard, but there's something a little bit more specific about it as well, to not reach that diminishing return. Because I think that my opinion of this, just obviously, and I'm a rookie on this right now, I'm learning more about it as I speak to you right now, and just my opinion on it, it's not so much a diminishing return on for real estate like it is for a big company like 8 Sleep or what are the ones that we've given examples. It's more so a diminishing return on when it hits a peak of your relationship, of them knowing you, maybe. Like, do you think that's the case, Chris? Like, let's say you and Danielle, I'm in Gig Harbor, I'm a realtor, and I get to know you guys well enough that then it's like, hey, Ben, you're going to be the guy I call.
Yeah.
Okay, when we do real estate, just leave me alone now. Essentially, do you know what I mean? Like, it's
100%. And I always say, like, I've always said from a marketing standpoint, your goal from a marketing perspective is to speak to many like you're speaking to one. Like, that is my number one like rule. You don't want generic out there. You want everybody to feel like you're reaching them with their problem, their solution, their situation individually. And when it becomes generic and it becomes looking like it's plug and play, that's when you're going to lose people. You're going to lose people when they don't feel that relationship, that connection. And I think that's just if I worked in an e-commerce, like, I would have never understood that at all, because theirs is
right,
just how many numbers can we put in front?
right.
Hey, can I put this shirt in front of a million people? And if I put it in front of a million people, 1,000 will buy it. Like, that's their numbers game. When in real estate, it's so much more emotional and so much more relationship driven, that you constantly have to be building that relationship and cultivating that relationship, and you
Mm,
can't talk to them like it's all of your buyers in a giant bucket. Like, you have to talk to them about their price point, the homes they're interested in, the situation they're in. Are they buying because they're relocating? Are they buying because their kids are growing out of their one bedroom, or whatever it is? Like,
yeah.
that's where the relationship of real estate, I think, is so unique when it comes to advertising,
Yep.
because it's really hard to send emails to everybody. But once you can figure out that way of talking to everybody while still talking to individual personas, I think is where you're going to have success. Like, that is the number one goal.
Is that probably why, from an email response perspective, when what we're doing with the auctions in marketplaces, where, the shorter the text and specifically adding the property that they have listed when we're reaching out to agents in the subject line, and then referring to it again, like, Is that why we get such a better rate on that?
Yeah, I think so. And there's some people who see right through it, right? They still,
of course there is. Yeah.
There's always going to be people who see right through it, and we haven't built any of those relationships with those agents. Like we haven't actually, cultivated an agent client relationship with them like you normally would, because I think there's a lot of other things to talk to from that standpoint. But I think
actually, can we talk about that? Let's talk about that for a second, because I think that this is a good example. So up in the Bay Area, right, where we've done, quite a lot of auctions and we've got a really good presence and a good name, is that it's funny when we do send a generic email out to one of them, like it doesn't intend to be generic, but it goes out at a certain time period where it goes out to someone that we know, like maybe like a guest on one of the podcasts, like a Anthony Navarro or an Eddie O'Sullivan. They respond going, Ben, I've spoken to them about, like, it kind of like you get a little, like, it's like, that's where we've got to be conscious to constantly update that. And that's on us, like, to go, they're a customer. Don't send them that shit, because it's up to you then. Like, it's kind of like you can't take that generic approach with people that know who you are, because then they feel like they're just a number and they're just blanketed across.
Exactly. And for everybody's understanding, inside of our CRM, we mark everybody from the levels of personas that they are. So are they a prospective agent? Are they a current agent? Are they a customer? Stuff like that. So when I say current agent, like, are they currently holding an auction property right now? And then have they run an auction in the past? That would be a customer from that standpoint. And we do the same thing from a seller standpoint. So a prospective seller, current seller, and then customer seller and stuff like that. So we specifically do that because I don't want to send emails out to the wrong people and burn our bridges by making people feel like they're less than important. Like, there's that old bank commercial or whatever it was, where it's like, you're just a number. You know what I mean? Like, you're just a number when you go into their bank. Well, here your family. I forgot exactly what it was from. Maybe it's a State Farm commercial or something like that. But it's true. People don't want to feel like just a number. They don't want to feel like, they're just another dollar in your pocketbook or anything like that. They want to feel like that you actually have a relationship with them. And we want them to feel like that too. So, like, we're a very small business, or not small, like, we're a small team, and we want to make sure that we're cultivating relationships to the nth degree.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully this has given people a bit of an understanding. I, again, grabbed onto it because it's a snappy little diminishing return. You say it and it's actually good, but I'm really glad that we went through this, because I think it's something that we can be conscious of when we giving the marketing tips and you're out there in your business, is that at this point is another text message, another generic text message, another generic email. How is your relationship with each individual person? Evaluate that, because sometimes another piece of just generic marketing or something that you push out could put them over the top, and it could cause you to lose that piece of business or lose that relationship.
Yeah, and pay attention to your ads too, and you'll be able to see and you'll be able to spot, if you're running ads, where the diminishing return is coming into place. You'll see that the cost per reach and everything like that, your CPM is going through the roof over time, just because people are seeing your ads so many times. So maybe
we could do an example one time. We open up the dashboard and we show people, like, so that they can have a visual, and those on the podcast we can just walk that through. But yeah. Either way, guys, thanks for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.